What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing well. Today I thought it might be interesting to take a look at what the experience is like before someone actually starts their private practice. Now, of course, everyone has their own unique experience, but there are certain types of things people go through that I hear over and over again, and so I'm kind of using my own kind of creative interpretation to average some of these experiences together and describe them here today. That way, those of you who are thinking about starting your private practice, or maybe you're kind of somewhere along the way in getting it started, can know what to anticipate and also feel validated as you go through some of these things. And of course, a disclaimer is this is just like a artistic rendering, if you will, of like the averages of some of the experiences I hear people share. You may go through none of these things or completely not relate at all, in which case, no worries. But I have heard these things over and over again, so I've just kind of compiled them together and I thought I'd share them here with you. From my experience, it seems like for a lot of us therapists, it's not necessarily our first career choice to go into private practice. Like, we don't go into grad school saying, I'm going to be a therapist in private practice. There are people who do say that, but not most of us. So for a lot of us, the journey into private practice actually starts when we're in a place where we weren't thinking about private practice as part of our career at all. Instead, what can happen for a lot of us is whatever career path we are on doesn't seem to be working quite like how we thought it would. Maybe we're tired, maybe we're underpaid, maybe we're feeling jaded with the mental health care system, maybe all the above, maybe we're burning out. And so then we start to question if the career path we're on is the one we want to stay on. I notice for a lot of folks in this phase, rather than it feeling like an easy pivot out of something that's not working, we tend to spend a bit of time trying to convince ourselves that wherever we're at right now is actually not as bad as we seem to think. It might sound something like, can I get out of this job? I don't know. What if I try private practice and it doesn't work? Maybe my job isn't that bad, actually. My coworkers seem okay. Come on, Marie, you got this. And isn't this how most humans approach any kind of change in general, where we just say, oh, can we just make it work the way it is right now? Maybe it's not that bad. However long folks end up spending in that phase, there tends to be a point eventually where folks go, no, this really isn't working. I need to make a change. Maybe private practice is going to be a better fit for me. And then the follow-up thought tends to be, wait, am I actually allowed to do this? Am I qualified enough? Do I have enough certifications? I've heard this both ways around age, where it's either, am I old enough to be in private practice, or am I too old to be in private practice? I hear both of those from everyone, seriously. You name it, whatever the questions are, they're all in this category of saying, like, even if I want to do private practice, am I allowed to right now? So this might sound something like, who are you kidding, Marie? Who are you to think you can go to private practice right now? You're not even experienced enough. You have to be an expert in something. Maybe in 10 years you can think about private practice. Of course, I'm an advocate of making sure you're qualified to do whatever you're hoping to do in your career. However, so many times I hear folks say this when they're fully qualified to start a private practice, but it's just those little scaries starting to creep up on you. So after this, maybe you spend some time doing a little research, getting some reassurance from people in the field where you realize, I'm qualified to do this private practice thing. So let's look into it. What does it entail? And as you get into it, you enter the next phase of thinking, I'm not able to do this. Maybe I'm qualified to do it, but there's too many steps involved. I don't know how to start a business or market my practice. And then there's all these things I have to think of, like HIPAA compliance, and I have to make sure I have a way of documenting everything. And I don't know how to do any of that. I've had that set up for me this whole time by my employer. So maybe it's just too much work and I'm not going to be able to figure it out, which of course there's always ways to get support to make sure you're capable and equipped to do every single step to get started in private practice, but that can be a barrier for folks that makes the process take a little bit longer than it might otherwise. And then for a lot of folks, you finally cross that threshold where you realize, like, it's really just not working in your current career path, whatever situation you're in. You've moved through some of those initial roadblocks and you are so sure that you are all in. Like, I'm doing it. I am doing the dang thing. I'm going to start my private practice. here we go. And something happens right in this moment where we're completely resolved to actually do it, that the real scaries set in. Like, not the logistical scaries of like, can I figure this out? Because you already kind of moved past that mental hurdle, but the mental scaries of like, but what if I fail? Like, what if I don't get any clients? What if I don't actually make any money? What if I don't actually like it? Like, maybe I'll miss my old job. Like, the bigger emotional scaries start to set in once we decide, like, I'm doing this thing. And for a lot of folks, these scaries can keep kind of escalating. Like, what if I become so isolated that I'm just completely alone? And then maybe in my current place, at least I have these built-in colleagues that I'm surrounded by all the time. Or what if I get sued? Or what if something criminal or terrible happens with one of my clients and I'm in trouble for it, or I'm on the line? Our minds have a way of filling in the blanks of worst case scenarios to try to stop us from doing something. But then some way, somehow you move through all of that and you say, I'm going to do this thing. And you dive into the how-to of it, like the actual practical steps that you need to run through to go from I haven't started private practice at all to my doors are open for business and I'm a private practice owner. You might download a checklist like mine. I have a free getting started checklist with everything you need to do. And as you go through it, you start to realize that this is a massive checklist of to-do items. So you might hit some bumps and roadblocks along the way where it feels like, I don't even know if I'm going to get through this whole list of stuff. But nonetheless, you push through at some point and muster the courage to get through the list one way or the other. As we move through the checklist of stuff to do to get started, we realize we need to find a way to get clients in our practice. People have to find us as their therapist. And in this moment, a lot of folks go one of two directions, but both of which is maybe not the best direction. For marketing our practices, some folks take the throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks approach, where you try pretty much every single marketing strategy you can think of and hope something works. And other folks take the approach of like, there must just be one singular marketing strategy that works for everyone, and I need to figure that out and just try to replicate it, regardless of whether that's what I want to do or if that's a good fit for my practice or my ideal clients, etc. And for a lot of folks, that ends up not working as well. At some point in this process, you've had your doors open for a little bit, maybe for a few months, and you look at your schedule and you feel so disheartened by how many open slots you have in your schedule. Maybe you've just gotten a trickle of a few clients in your first months after opening, and you start to question everything. Like, what have I done? This is not working. My marketing strategy is not filling my practice. I'm not making enough money. Oh no, this is gonna fail. Like, all of that thought process can fill our minds, and we might start to wonder, like, should I go back to whatever career trajectory I was on before? Was all of this just a giant mistake? Despite these second-guessing thoughts, most folks do hang on a little longer than this, even though it can be easy to start to think we're failing, even though we're just a few months into a new business. And pretty quickly, we can start to realize that even though we may still have so many open slots on our schedule, that even with whatever few clients we have, we may be already starting to approach the same income that we had before when we were working full-time or maybe more than full-time for somebody else. And maybe we can make it work on this amount of income for a season of time while we keep building our caseload. And maybe we also start to realize that we enjoy the work that we're doing so much more when we have a bit more say in who we get to work with and when we're adequately compensated for that work. And maybe we start to realize that we can use that open time available in our schedule to fine-tune our marketing approach so that we can make sure we are putting our marketing energies in a direction that's most effective as far as helping us find clients that we like to work with, and also that aligns best with kind of our skill sets, things that bring us joy. Maybe we can even find a marketing approach that feels like we're contributing something meaningful. You know, I'm talking about offering information through a workshop that maybe not everyone in that workshop would be able to afford therapy, but they're benefiting, or blog posts, which are free for folks who might not be able to afford therapy. And it's kind of serving a dual purpose where you're supporting the broader broader public, but it is also helping to fill your practice. And there tends to be a point somewhere for folks that once you start to fill your practice enough that it feels like it's sustaining itself and continuing to grow, somewhere in there is an exhale. Maybe you don't feel like you're out of the woods yet because you need to fill your caseload more in order for it to be sustainable long term. But I can see that exhale with nearly every person that I talk to who's in private practice, even in the early phases, where I often hear folks say something along the lines of, "Oh, I should have started my private practice a long time ago." Or, "I can't believe I waited so long to start." Even when we haven't quite fully arrived in our business, kind of being in a state of thriving and being super busy and full, it tends to feel a lot better much earlier in the process than you might realize. I'd like to reiterate that this is just a reflection of a lot of different stories that I hear over and over again, and not everyone goes through even any of these phases. Potentially, you might have your own very unique journey, and I support that. But I wanted to name some of these experiences that I wind up hearing over and over again, because I think what can happen for a lot of us is whenever we hit something that feels a lot like a roadblock in this journey, once we realize that it's something that's happening to everybody else or a lot of other people, rather than seeing the roadblock as a sign that maybe we're not cut out for private practice, that instead we can just see it as, okay, this is a challenge, but it's part of the journey, and other people have hit this challenge before and moved through it. So perhaps I might be able to learn from some of their hangups, what they did, what worked for them, and adapt some of those to serve me so I can move through this roadblock as well. Now, in this episode, I didn't talk about here's all the ways to navigate all of those roadblocks, but I do have some videos touching on different topics that I spoke about in this episode. So I'll make sure I link to those below, as well as my free Getting Started checklist, which is linked in pretty much every single video I post as well, because I don't want that to be a roadblock in getting started either. And before we close, I'd like to thank TherapyNotes.com for sponsoring this video. TherapyNotes helps with all of your practice management needs, from scheduling to notes to billing. They have a HIPAA-secure telehealth platform, and so much more. If you'd like to check out TherapyNotes, you can get 2 months to try it for free with no commitment just by clicking the link in the description of this video. Well, I had a lot of fun putting this episode together using kind of a little bit of a creative interpretation of different folks' stories that I've heard, as well as my own experiences too. Let me know in the comments if there's any experiences you had starting a private practice that I didn't touch on today, so that other folks can learn from your experiences as well. And until next time, from one therapist to another, I wish you well.